Hi guys, it's been a little while, but welcome to another cosplay in the kitchen. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but for this I just had to make an exception. For those of you who know me as a cosplayer, or know one of my favourite characters to cosplay is Ash from Evil Dead. It's by far my favourite horror franchise, and I'm a big horror guy. And what I've wanted them to make for years is an official replica of Ash's chainsaw. You haven't been able to get one. I started off using an old bottle with a chainsaw jammed in the end, like a fake plastic chainsaw. Then when I was on holiday in America, I got the Spirit Halloween chainsaw and modified that, which is something a lot of Ash cosplayers do. I'm not usually the type of guy to spend sort of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds on prop replicas costumes. I find they're just a little bit too expensive. So I've never bought one of those like £600, £700 proper converted Homelight XL chainsaws, which you can get. But now they've done an official replica, and I knew that I had to get it. So officially this is an Army of Darkness chainsaw. The reason for that is there are all sorts of weird copyrights going on about the Evil Dead movies. That all the original 3 trilogy are produced by different companies, which is why they always have to refilm the start. If you watch Evil Dead 2, Linda's been recast from Evil Dead 1, and if you watch the start of Army of Darkness, she's been recast again. So they always have to reshoot those scenes because they never had rights to the previous movies. It gets complicated. The reason I highlight that is there are some things about it that make it an Army of Darkness chainsaw, and some things that don't. But let's have a look at it. So here it is. This is the Syndicate chainsaw from Army of Darkness, strictly speaking. And on the surface, it is pretty cool. You've got a nice handle in here, vertical handles. You can slot your wrist in like that. And you've got your chainsaw hand. But what I want to do is go through a couple of the details. Before I do, what I want to do is give a sort of shout out, and I will put a link in the description below to a better review if you're interested in the really nitty gritty details of this by Brett of Brett's Groovy Chainsaws. Brett is not just an expert, he is the expert on Evil Dead chainsaws. He makes the best replicas, he knows everything there is about every variation. And he goes into real depth with this. And he also does give it quite a positive review, which for someone who does the high-end replicas, I think is quite flattering. But certainly worth checking out if you want really in-depth details. But I will go through my observations and what I think. I'm going to split it into 2 sides. I'm going to start off with talking about the body. Now, on the surface, I quite like the body. It's a really nice, worn sort of colour. It looks battered, and it looks sort of right to me, mostly. There's a couple of things about it, though, that I want to mention that I'm not a huge fan of, and a couple of things that I am. So let's start off with some of the positives. Like I said, it looks like Ash's chainsaw. The bottom here is a bit chunkier, just so you can fit your hands more comfortably, I guess, because it's got to be appropriate for everyone. There's a couple of little sort of quality of plastic replica bits that aren't perfect, but I accept. For example, this, I think it's a muffler here, isn't quite as sort of indented as it should be, and you can see it's just plastic, you know, it should be all inside, but that's fine. Also, you've got things like there's no pull cord. Blame people like me for that, because Syndicate have said they couldn't add the pull cord and still release it in Europe. You hear by my accent, I'm British, I live in Europe, therefore it's us European Evil Dead fans that have ruined it for you Americans not having a pull cord. I'm kind of tempted to drill a hole in there and insert a pull cord, but I'm a bit worried about cracking it, so I might not because this was expensive. You've got a few other nice details. You've got this little flickable switch here. That's cool. Doesn't do anything, but it's nice that you can flick it. It sort of moves in all directions. It's not a proper switch, but you know, you've got the effect there. And like I said, it's nicely worn. In terms of it being an Army of Darkness chainsaw, you are missing, so here on this run, one of the things that I noticed with the Army of Darkness one is there isn't a gap. In Evil Dead 2, there's a gap between this circle and the chainsaw. There isn't on Army of Darkness, so that's right. There's usually a little piece here that I noticed on the chainsaws. In everything else, it's not an Army of Darkness, so that seems right to me. There's a couple of little flaws in how they've done it. Well, I say flaws. Like this metal bit here, look, the bolts look good from that angle. They don't look so good from that angle because it's just solid plastic, but again, it's a plastic replica. What did you expect, really? The caps, hang on, I'm going to show you that. These caps here, both black, one should be red, but then again in Army of Darkness it's very, very dirty, so they kind of look black anyway, so I don't mind that. What I do think they're missing from Army of Darkness is a bit of the grime. Like the actual body of the chainsaw in Army of Darkness is far blacker and grimier. But again, to look like Ash's chainsaw is fine. One thing I'm not crazy about, this speaker on the front. Because, you know, you've got to put a speaker on it to make noise, and I'll show you the noise in a minute. But it's like, if only there was some kind of grill on it that we could have turned into the speaker that would have looked natural. Probably a reason they didn't do that, but I think it's a shame because they could have put the grill in that bit and left this solid, which made it look slightly more accurate. Now, if you are a sort of Ash chainsaw connoisseur, there's probably one thing I haven't mentioned that's driving you crazy right now, and that is this handle. So this handle is not supposed to be slanted forward. It's not slanted forward in anything. It's not slanted forward in Ash vs Evil Dead. It's not slanted forward in Evil Dead 2. It's not slanted forward in Army of Darkness. It is vertical. Look, even on my t-shirt. The only time it slanted forward was a prop being sold, an Ash vs Evil Dead chainsaw prop being sold, that had it slanted forward because it was damaged. Now what is interesting is if you Google Ash's chainsaw and go on the Ash vs Evil Dead wiki or the Evil Dead wiki, whatever it's called, they use a picture of that chainsaw with it slanted forward. And I suspect that's what they looked at and that's what they based it on. And unfortunately it's wrong, and there's not an easy way to fix it. Because, I mean, I thought maybe I could take it off and just readjust it, but the screens holding it in are so far on the inside, you can't get to them. So that can't be fixed, which is a bit of a shame. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a bit of a shame. Moving on, the blade, on the other hand, I think is slightly disappointing. Let's start off with the bonuses though. I like the sort of wash where it goes darker and lighter in the middle, which is like the real chainsaw. I'm not so keen on the thickness. Look at the thickness of that, it's a bit ridiculous. Again, Brett of Brett's Groovy Chainsaws in his review actually says some of the Ash vs Evil Dead ones were quite thick. And he knows more than me by far, so I will take his word for it. But I think it's a shame that it's so thick. When I compare it to my Spirit Halloween chainsaw that I had, that was much thinner and much more like a real saw. Also, there's no movement. The Spirit Halloween ones you could get could move, and they're about a third of the price of this. So that's a little bit of a shame. I'm also not fond of these screws. There are screw holes in it. I just feel like you could have made it as one piece and inserted it. It would have been thinner and you wouldn't have screws sort of ruining the look. And then probably the biggie that I know a lot of people have complained about is the blood splatter. The blood splatter isn't bad. It's very shiny. It's a bit light, so it looks a bit like paint to me. But I've seen it in photos and it looks quite good in photos. But I don't like the blood splatter. I wish they'd just left it off. You know, Ash's chainsaw is more often than not covered in blood, despite those films. It would have been far more versatile as a prop without it. It's easy to add if you want it, but hard to take away because this has got like a 3D texture to it. You can't just paint over this. You have to sand it right off if you want to get rid of it. And even as an Army of Darkness chainsaw, it shouldn't be covered in blood because he doesn't really fight anyone with it that bleeds red. He fights Deadites in the pit and they have that sort of blacky green blood that Deadites do. He does carve up himself, the clone of himself, and I think that blood is red. But really, it never looks splattered in red blood in Army of Darkness. So claiming it as an Army of Darkness chainsaw splattered in blood is a little bit disappointing. Now you might think, wow, you're being quite harsh on this. And I'm not, I do like it. It's cool. Look at it. I'm really happy that I've got one. But there's a few little minor things that I wish they had done better. And the reason why I wish they'd done better is because it's quite expensive still. So this chainsaw is £150. To give you an idea, you can get the Spirit Halloween ones for about £60. Now obviously you can't put your hand in them, but they move and they've got sound. And you can hollow them out and move the switch inside, which is what I did for that one. It's nowhere near as accurate in the body, but kind of you'd think practically they could have maybe brought some of that into this one, but they didn't. £150 for it when it doesn't move is very expensive. However, what it does do is make noise, and it is accurate. So, here's the noise. I'm going to turn it on. It's very loud. Now, one of the things with it is when you turn it on, it stays on like this all the time. You've got the revving the whole time. And if you push the button inside, you get that. I'm going to turn it off so I don't know if you can hear me over it. So it revs the whole time, which is cool and probably accurate, like really how a chainsaw would work. But it's a bit of a shame if you like doing that sort of jump scare, jump out and activate the chainsaw, because it's going to be revving the whole time unless you flick the switch. But it's fine, you know, it's loud, which is really cool. It's a good sound effect, I think, which is cool for sounding like a chainsaw on a pop like this. So I think that's pretty good. Like I said, my only real concern is that it is quite expensive. However, that said, if you want a chainsaw that looks like Ash's, it's the cheapest option. You can't get one that's accurate to Ash's. You know, you can buy the Spirit Halloween one, it's nowhere near right, even once you've replicated bits. Like I got that bit 3D printed, I put the handle on, I put this bar on, it's still nowhere near right. This is far more accurate. So it's really cool. I'm really glad I have it. I wish it was a little bit cheaper, and I wish those minor little niggles were fixed. But, you know, if you want Ash's chainsaw, it's good. So I would get it. So I suppose I still rate it quite highly. I still think it's very cool. I guess if I had to say one thing about it, I'd say it's groovy. Till next time, guys.